As the launch of this bike coincides with the launch of the group set as well, I thought it might be worthwhile to share a few details, even though at this point in time I have no official information regarding it, so I can only tell you about what it looks like, how it feels like, and what is it like to ride. So let's start with the possibly the biggest new feature, and that is the lever shape. It's a complete redesign, and you might have seen it already on spy shots, and it's really ergonomic, really nice soft chunky rubber hoods. Also 2 new programmable buttons that you can use to shift, or I guess in the future program for some other functions as well. And overall the levers themselves have a really striking design, really nice progressive lever throw, and a much nicer brake feel than before. I think that is one of the biggest improvements over the old SRAM Red, which I've been using a few years back before I switched over to Shimano. And yeah, in my opinion, this was one of the downsides compared to Shimano, so now that has been fixed. And as I said, they look really cool, and the ergonomics are really nice as well. However, I do think that the reach is somewhat longer than normal levers or most other levers on the market. So that should be taken into consideration when you want to fit this to your bike, as it might alter your total reach to the bar and to the lever. So that's the levers covered. The shifting action is the same E-tap functionality, so both at the same time for a front shift, and you get a harder gear and an easier gear. This is the default, but of course you are able to program this in the SRAM app as well. The other new feature that's part of the braking system are these skeletal looking calipers. These have also been leaked before, so might not be as much of a surprise, but it's a really extremely pared down design. A 2-piece caliper still, but a lot of the material has been removed. As I said, the brake feel is just really nice compared to the old one, and I rode it on some downhills, some descents here in Italy. No squealing, very nice progressive modulation, so I'm really happy with that part of the group set. The brake pad seems to be the same as before, so no changes there. I can't really tell you much about the compound here, but it looks to be organic just by looking at it. And also the pad clearance, while doesn't look as big as on Shimano, might be a bleeding thing, and I did get a bit of tinging, but this is a press bike, it's not perfectly set up, so I wouldn't really put any conclusions on that. It appears to have retained the same bleed system with the quick entry point down here, the Stealth Magic I think it's called. And one thing I'm not really sure about is that if the DOT brake fluid has still been retained, or if they did switch over to mineral oil like on some of their mountain bike products. So that's still an unknown for me, or maybe if I peek under the lever hood I can tell you, but yeah, there's no hint of that here. No, unfortunately I can't tell you that, but what I can tell you is that we have contact point adjustment still, and plenty of lever reach adjustment for the blade itself, so it's new. The rotor design is also new. It's a two-piece center lock mount like before, aluminum carrier with some vents on there, but it's not a floating design, which I think it could have been as an evolution, but we'll leave that to the aftermarket companies. But as I said, very happy with how the braking was. Then if you go back towards the center of the bike, we have a completely new integrated power meter design. This is an AXS enabled power meter, still integrated chainrings, just like before, although like much of the rest of the group set, the design is still very much pared down, very minimalistic, and the ratios have been carried over, I believe, from the previous version. This example is a 46:33, so possibly the lowest ratio on the road end. And yeah, the whole power meter unit is just a lot sleeker, than before. Also with this battery cover here, much nicer integration on there, so a sleeker design overall. I really liked quark power meters before. I've used them for a number of years and it's just a good reliable unit. However, I'm still not a fan of the complete integration with the chainrings because it leaves you tied up to a single ratio, and yeah, even though the longevity is great, but still not very practical because it's a wear item. The crank design doesn't appear to have changed too much, so it's still a dub spindle, still exogram carbon crank arms, aluminum inserts for the pedal thread, and I believe still a cup interface, well, or should I say cone operated self-locking interface with a self-extracting nut on this side. So not many changes there as far as I can tell, at least. The front derailleur, again the same topic as the whole group set. It here continues, so it's all a very pared down design, and I think this was probably the weakest point of all SRAM group sets historically, and also true for the previous generation. And I can tell from the short few rides that I had here that this is an area where there's a definite improvement. The shifting is reliable, stronger, and fast. I still won't say just as fast as Shimano, but it's really getting there, so that's a good thing for sure. Still the same external battery design as with all AXS components, also been retained. So yeah, front shifting definitely a big improvement. Of course, still fully wireless throughout the bike. The rear mech is another striking piece of equipment. Really pared down design, again heavily machined aluminum body and parallelogram, so possibly in search of lightweight. The rear derailleur is another heavily reworked item of the group set. Features a lot of machining, a lot of cutouts in the parallelogram, possibly in search of lightweight. As far as I can tell, the capacity has increased as well, because this one is rated at 10 to 36 tooth. So previously that was not a standard road group set, but it was the wide range. Now it seems to be standard, which is, well, on par with the current trends. So basically you can have a less than 1-to-1 ratio in this case, so 33 at the front, 36 at the back. Really low gearing. I would be curious to see, however, how does it do on the opposite end. What will the pros ride? What will be the biggest available ranges? Because for me as a racer, that's more important in terms of the drivetrain efficiency, which again SRAM has been lacking in the previous years, in the previous iterations. So interesting to see how that evolves. The pulley wheel diameters have also been increased, as you can see. The bottom one also is a two-piece design, but at this point I'm not really sure if it does feature the spinning inside. Probably not, that you get on the transmission mountain bike group set. However, it is an interesting construction because it uses an aluminum carrier with plastic teeth, so that's, I think, a good way to reduce noise on there. If you look at the chain, again it's very similar to the one used on the transmission mountain bike group sets, and it might appear identical at first, but it has red stamping on there, so I would say possibly there are some differences in there. Maybe they have retained the larger roller diameter that you had before with the flat top chain, although it still uses a flat top, so I'm not really sure. But also features heavy cutouts on basically all the inner and the outer plates, and hollow pins as well, so really high-end chain, hopefully with better efficiency than last time. The cassette doesn't really seem that much different from the previous group set. Even I would call it unchanged when looking at it from this side. But if you look at it from the other side, you can see a slightly different back plate, but it's still an XDR cassette with a 10-tooth small cog, and also the exo design. So you have this outer basic cone, which is then machined down into the teeth of the cassette, and it's a one-piece hollow construction. and on the back of it you get the largest cog pinned and made out of aluminum. Yeah, that's possibly the version that only the highest and red group set will have. The lower versions down, Force, Rival, etc., if they do get these upgrades over time, which I'm pretty sure they would, will probably stick to a regular stamped and pinned cassette. Rear mech still uses, of course, the same AXS battery, interchangeable, that's unchanged from the previous versions. And one other thing to note, particularly on this bike, is the fact that it uses the SRAM UDH derailleur hanger, so it is compatible with transmission. But the other fact is that since this standard is becoming more widely available now, a lot more bikes are using it, it means that it's easier to source replacements, so that's a big plus. And maybe some aftermarket options if you're on Shimano. For that case, you can have direct mod options, etc., or maybe longer extended ones for bigger cassettes. It gives you a lot of opportunities. Maybe a mullet drivetrain on this one from SRAM if that's something you fancy. So I really like to see that. It's a nice piece of design. Also part of the SRAM build kit are the Zip 353 wheels. Now these are not new per se, but still it's a high-end version of the wheel set, worthy of the rest of the components used here. So I think that's a good addition as well. So I already talked about the front shifting. I was really happy with that. The rear shifting is quite crisp, quite reliable. It's not perfectly set up, as I said. I need to do some fine-tuning on there, but it's quick to do, as with all AXS group sets. Yeah, I just had a few kilometers on it, so I can't really tell definitively. It seemed, again, faster than the previous iterations, not quite as fast as Shimano. But the upside of SRAM is that the running of the drivetrain is really, really silent compared to the other group sets because of the elastomer rings on the cassette. And generally the design just caters for that. So that will be a pleasing aspect for some people for sure. And for the rest, let's wait until we see the final specs and the final variations. I'm not really sure about the ratios of the cassette that will be available. So possibly the rear derailleur says 1036, so that will be the largest road option. This is 1033, and I would bet there will be a 1030 or 1028, something for racers with tighter ratios, which would come in handy, particularly as you have a large variety of front changing options as well. So that's the new SRAM Red group set for you. If I'll be able to, then I'll bring you some more updates on how it performs and how do I like it. And of course, I'll be getting my own Strada Italia soon enough, so I'll be able to report more on that as well. So if you're interested in any of this, then of course, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.